Hello, everyone, and welcome to One Controller Report Podcast, episode 94. Benjamin Yoder here today to talk to you about video games. We're gonna jump right into a topic that we left off with last week. This is a sequel podcast, episode 93, part 2. Kind of. We're just gonna talk about a follow-up on something. So last week I talked a lot about like soft modding systems and things like that, and so this week I made a decision. So basically when I was listening to the Giant Bomb cast, Giant Bomb is a video game website with a lot of old GameSpot people there. Somebody wrote in actually last week and was talking about Wii U soft modification, and I was just like, So he was basically, talking about keeping the integrity of his system and things like that. And a big part of, why I was a little worried about soft modding my Wii U is because I'm still using the online services and I still like to buy games officially and stuff like that. I am pretty much 100% buying games officially for the most part. Or if I need to use another ROM, I don't have a problem with that as long as I purchase the game otherwise legitimately. But on there, Jeff Gertzman, who's kind of the founder of the whole thing, mentioned, hey, why don't you just get another Wii U to do the soft modification stuff to the guy who wrote in? And I was like, yeah, I wonder how much that is. And I looked it up, and Wii U's, just the consoles, are not that expensive. They're like between $40 and $70. So I got one for about $55. It looks like it's in pretty good condition. It's always hard to tell with, buying online. But I mean, there were definitely some that were in very nasty conditions. But I contacted the seller of one to make sure that the pictures were the ones that he was selling, and he said they were. And as far as I can tell in the pictures, they look fine. So we'll see how it goes. The person's actually local here too, so maybe it'll arrive early next week. So I did that. It was like $55, $60, and then like eBay was just like, oh, we have a coupon for you. And I'm like, sure, I don't know why you have a coupon that you're advertising to me while I'm checking out, but sure. So I put in their coupon code thing there and got $5 off, and it was free shipping. So $55 I think is a pretty good alternative, because I was talking about getting a 3DS capture card, and that once you factor in both the 3DS, the service of getting it modified, and also the capture card itself, you're looking at like $400 or so. So $50 I think is a pretty good alternate solution. Obviously, it's not running on native hardware, which is kind of a problem, but since the 3DS capture cards don't seem to be readily available at this time, at least as far as I can tell, again, I'm really not always greatest at searching for some stuff. After I figured out how to actually look up what the Wii U DS play. So the whole point of this, if you didn't listen last week, was that I want to play DS games in a way I can capture them, and the Wii U can emulate DS games to some extent when you soft mod it. So I did look up was able to find some footage, and it looks mostly fine. I mean, as far as I can tell, it's a game by game basis how well it turns out. And if I'm using it for more like streaming stuff or not so official, like if I were making a actual full review of something, I might feel a little uncomfortable using that emulator. But at least in terms of streaming something or doing a quick play stream even, I think I would feel comfortable doing that, and just, noting at the beginning that, hey, this is being ran via alternative means, and the quality of the footage down to the frame rate, whether it's better or worse, would not necessarily represent the final game. So we'll see. I'm looking forward to trying that out. I think, Phantasy Star Zero is always my go-to game for DS. In terms of testing stuff, I love Phantasy Star Zero. It's a shame I can't get like my save data on there, because starting over in Phantasy Star games is always a troublesome task. But yeah, I'll start with that, and then maybe do Tales of the Tempest, which I hear is pretty bad. But I already have a patched ROM for that I got for a R4 cart back when I was doing Love Plus. So maybe that and Love Plus, and make it fairly easy. And try those few games out and see how it goes. There is a list online of games that people have tested, but it's kind of hit and miss. Some of them are completely non-functional. Other ones are in different states of being unplayable, things like that. And one other interesting thing, and I may have mentioned this last week, is that you can actually boost the rendering resolution of DS games on Wii U, in the soft modded version, not the Wii U Virtual Console. So you can do that, and that's kind of interesting. Again, I wouldn't want to do that for an actual content, but for something that's more casual, it might not be a terrible thing to do just to make it look a little cleaner. But yeah, and speaking of, starting Phantasy Star over again, it might be a Phantasy Star filled month or so in the near future. A couple things happened. One, in my last stream during the Zelda stream, I was talking about it with my friend, but basically he got me to install, I think it's Efina or something like that, the private server for Phantasy Star Online Blueburst. So part of the reason why I never really spent a lot of time on Phantasy Star Online Blueburst, which is basically like a PC re-release of Phantasy Star Online. There's the Dreamcast version, and there's multiple ports to GameCube and Xbox. I mainly played the GameCube version of Phantasy Star Online, but I have put some time into the Xbox version as well. Which, if you didn't know, the Xbox version of Phantasy Star Online can still be played offline as long as you have a gamer tag. So if you ever heard that it's not playable anymore, that's not true. You just have to have a gamer tag on your system, and once you have a gamer tag, you can create a character, a lot of characters actually. Under, I think it's like, I forget how many. I think it's 16 characters on a single Xbox hard drive, maybe even more than that. I don't remember for sure. Anyways, so Blueburst is a re-release that included episode 1, episode 2, and added new content, episode 4. And I've always wanted to check out that episode 4 content, but I was playing on I don't know if this is pronounced properly, so it's going to sound like I'm cursing, but I've cursed on this podcast before, so whatever. But the shithack servers, they were one of the earlier Phantasy Star Online private servers. I think even when the actual official servers were online for Phantasy Star Online, they were up and running for private servers on that. So I used to play on their servers, and what I always found with Blueburst is I'd come back and my server data or my character data would get wiped because all the character data was stored server side versus client side to help prevent hacking and things like that. Because if you played Phantasy Star Online back in the day, like hacking was all over the place in those games because a lot of the data and stuff was running client side, so they couldn't really validate a lot of information about what you're doing with your character. And so this new server, it seems like it's a bit more stable in terms of the character data, as far as talking to some friends about it, they were saying. And then also it looks like you can back up your data, so you can export your data from the server and hold on to it if you want to have another copy just in case, which is really cool. So I'm actually kind of interested because I've never played episode 4 content, and I'm not a big Phantasy Star Online, like the first Phantasy Star Online. I'm not a huge fan of that game anymore. There's definitely things I like about it, but I wouldn't say it's my game of choice when it comes to Phantasy Star. Phantasy Star 0 is definitely one, and then Phantasy Star Portable 2 is definitely one as well. So I started putting time into that, and I started playing with a couple of friends. This is good fun. I mean, it's always fun to play games with friends. It just takes time to get started again. Like I feel like the first 20 levels of Phantasy Star Online, I have a hard time really getting too invested in because it's just so slow going, especially if you play a force. Like forces in particular are just like, So my friend gave me 10,000 Meseta, and he's been power leveling me a bit to try to get me to where I want to be in terms of playing episode 4 content. So we'll see. I'm like level 10 right now, so not very far at all, but I'm hoping that we keep playing. And then in other Phantasy Star news, and this is also a big part of what I've been trying to figure out this weekend, I was also talking to a couple of friends about Phantasy Star Portable, and apparently, and so I didn't know this. So there's this software on PlayStation 3 called Ad Hoc Party, and it basically lets you play local wireless PSP games online. And I was definitely aware of the service, but I didn't really realize how all-encompassing it was. I thought it was limited to a very specific set of titles, but what I'm learning is that apparently it just kind of works with most PSP games. So you can play most PSP games that have local wireless online with people. So I found a list from like 2008 that said Phantasy Star Portable 1 was playable. I was like, oh, cool. I have a friend that hasn't played Phantasy Star Portable 1, and so maybe we could sit down and play it. And then I was trying to set it up and test it with another friend who is also kind of interested in playing some Phantasy Star Portable. And he was like, well, you can play Phantasy Star Portable 2, you know? And I'm like, oh, wow, Phantasy Star Portable 2 is a much better game than Phantasy Star Portable. Or not really a much better game, but there's a lot of nice quality of life changes between Phantasy Star Portable 1 and Phantasy Star Portable 2. And there's more content and things like that. So we sat down and tried that out, and we didn't have a lot of luck, but we're going to try a few different things. Apparently, I was reading online, the Japanese version of Ad Hoc Party seems to be more stable for some reason, which is weird because I would think that, you know, the servers being in Japan would cause more problems, but we'll see. We haven't sat down and tested it really yet, but yeah, I was like, oh, let's try this. And so I've been putting a little time into trying to figure that out. We haven't had a successful play session yet, but we're going to try again with the Japanese Ad Hoc Party. And I was also trying to figure out like information about regarding Vita games, because I saw there were some Vita games that supported it, like God Eater 2 and Tokiden and some other stuff. So I was like, well, do a lot of Vita games support this or no? Because Phantasy Star Nova is continuing down the Phantasy Star path. Phantasy Star Nova is also another game I'd love to play at some point. You know, I don't mind playing it single player if I ever do, but online is always, you know, a nice experience to have with those types of games. I played most of Phantasy Star Universe and Phantasy Star Portable by myself, so I'm definitely, and Phantasy Star Zero as well. So I'm definitely okay playing those games alone. Although the grind, I would say I'm less willing to dedicate as much time to just like grinding those games out as much as I love just playing those games. So I was looking into that, but apparently it's only very specific Vita games. There's like 4 or 5 games that you can do it with. And I loaded up the Japanese version of Ad Hoc Party on PS3 and kind of verified that there's like different tabs for Vita games rather than just like a big ball. Like the PSP section is just kind of like this big section you can just go into, where the Vita games are like very specific sections you go to for very specific games. So yeah, I've been having a Phantasy Star week and weekend, and so hopefully I don't burn out. You know, the nice thing about Phantasy Star Online versus Phantasy Star Portable 2 is they're very, very different games. You know, they are grindy in some ways, but you know, I'm looking forward to doing episode 4 content, and you know, I'm probably not gonna ever go super far into Blue Burst. You know, I've put my time into Phantasy Star online. I think I'm like level 140 on GameCube with my Fomar, and then my Humar is like level 110 or something like that. So you know, I've invested the time I need to, and I don't really want to grind another character up way high. So if I ever want to do that, I might just, you know, do on the private servers, you can do sandbox mode, where you can basically just give yourself levels and just give myself the levels to be at like level 100 to be like, all right, let's start from here. Cause yeah, the grind from yeah, low level grind in Phantasy Star Online is definitely not my favorite thing. I do think there's some nice things about, you know, using the different weapons, because at some point in Phantasy Star Online, there's very specific weapons you want to use over others, usually the multi-hit weapons, and I think it gets kind of stale in that regard doing that, but yeah, Ad Hoc Party is a really cool thing. You know, for you know, the PSP game, or the game servers for PSP games are down now. I don't know of any that are actually still live, if any. I don't know if it's like a Call of Duty Wii situation where there might be some PSP game servers still running at like EA or something, where very specific games are still working or not. But it's a great alternative when, you know, the actual servers went down for PSP stuff. You know, then the next milestone is when the PS3 game servers go down. I'm sure Ad Hoc Party will go down with it, and at that point, you know, we'll probably be out of luck. But maybe someday somebody will take Ad Hoc Party and modify it in a way that can be ran, through a soft modded PS3 or something like that. But hopefully that day doesn't come soon that we have to do that. The PS3 and 360 are getting old, but thankfully they're still online. We'll see how it goes though. We're coming around to the PS4 generation, PS4 and Xbox One generation ending, so hopefully those things are still going. Speaking of games that are going offline, though, Lost Reavers, which I talked about fairly recently on this podcast, is shutting down. I think it's March 30th. I could be wrong about that, or May 30th. I'll have to double check the date, but it's shutting down here in the next couple months. Yeah, I mean, I talked about it on the podcast a little while ago, and that game is super grindy. If you don't know, it's like a Bandai Namco kind of like hack and slash game. It's kind of like Phantasy Star, actually. So I guess we're going to keep talking about these multiplayer hack and slash games this week. But yeah, it's not bad. You basically have like 4 different characters you can select, and each has different sets of guns and swords you can use. But the grind to level up, and the grind to get equipment, and the grind to access new levels is just so steep. Admittedly, it's a free to play game, so it's kind of expected. But yeah, it's not great. It's not a great game, but as you level up, it definitely gets more involving in terms of the combo system and things like that. I was playing the, I forget her name. Is it Sayuri? It's like the schoolgirl lady. She doesn't look very young. She doesn't look like a schoolgirl very much. But I was playing her and had some neat combos and things like that. And I really enjoyed that game. It just at some point, the friend I was playing with, we were looking at the EXP grind to get to the next set of levels. And we're like, we're going to have to play like 20 hours of this probably before we get another level, like another set of environments to play in. Or not even environments, like different harder difficulties of those environments even. And I was just like, I would love to do this, but I don't know if I can put up with so much grinding of the exact same levels over and over again. And I really don't know how much paying money in that actually mattered. I really didn't fully understand how the upgrade system for weapons and stuff worked in that game, and buying weapons. It definitely seemed like you could buy these like little research chips and stuff that basically would give EXP towards earning certain weapons. But the EXP seemed to be random per chip you used. So it seemed kind of random of like exactly what a set amount of money would purchase for you, since you're basically doing random rolls on the amount of EXP you gain to getting towards a new weapon. And then even like getting the drops from the missions, there were some randomization elements where it's like, oh, you have to beat this mission in this format, but you can't choose the format of the mission. So it's like each mission has like 4 routes, and it randomly puts you on those routes, and then depending on which route you finished, you get a different reward, but you need all 4 rewards to get the actual item you want from it. And it's just, I don't really recommend going to it now, especially like as it's shutting down, but I am sad to see it go. Anytime an online game goes away, I'm a little disappointed, because I love going back to games and checking them out years and years later. So seeing Lost Reavers go offline, a game that's only playable online as far as I can tell, it's sad to see it go. So I looked at the date earlier. I looked at the date. I don't remember if it's March or May, but it's on the 30th, and it lands on a Thursday. So maybe if the servers are still up on the Thursday, it goes offline. Maybe for the stream that night, we'll just play a bunch of Lost Reavers as a celebratory end to that game. They didn't give a time of when the server is going to go down, so I don't know if it's going to be earlier in the day or later in the night or something like that. Maybe it'll go down at midnight Eastern, midnight Pacific, who can say. But we'll spend some time with it if the servers are still up on that day that it goes offline. I'll set a calendar reminder to remind me to do that. Yeah. Otherwise, I've also just been playing some Castlevania 64 again. I think I mentioned this before, but I'm planning on doing Castlevania 64 video, which is going to be pretty tough, because unlike the Mighty Number 9 video, which came out recently, Mighty Number 9 has a very there are very specific good things that Mighty Number 9 does, and then very specific bad things that Mighty Number 9 does. Where Castlevania 64 is kind of like a hodgepodge of stuff. Like it does certain things very well, but then it does like in doing those things very well, it kind of messes a lot of other stuff up. And then there's like things that are like, oh, it's impressive that this game is doing this, or at least trying to do this, even if it fails to do so. So it's going to be a hard video to do because there's a lot of caveats to Castlevania 64. I think it's a good game overall, but there's just a lot of issues to kind of wade through. And I always want to, I want to be, upfront with my videos and not say just like, oh, I love Castlevania 64, and then not sit there and be like, but this game doesn't have her, and not sit there and tell you about all the problems the game has, because that's important that if I explain what this game is, I need to tell you why this game has these problems, and if there's a redeeming factor to those problems, I want to specify that. But I don't have any Castlevania 64 footage, weirdly enough, despite playing that game multiple times the last 10 years or so. I got my Frame Meister last year, so it was a good time, and I got new S-Video cables for Nintendo 64, so it was a good time to go ahead and just sit down, get a refresher of the game. I beat both Reinhardt and Carrie Fernandez, the two playable characters, both their stories. I got the bad ending for Carrie Fernandez for the first time ever, which it's actually harder for me to get the bad ending than the good ending these days. I had to sit there and purposely like force myself into the bad ending. It took me like 30 minutes to get it there, but we got there. And there's like a couple extra boss fights. One of the extra boss fights is actually a kind of like I don't know if you call it a side quest. It's really a punishment for spending money in the store, too much money in the store. But whatever. But basically, I got to play two boss fights I never played before, and then also got to see an ending I never did before. And then I was sitting there thinking, when I did the Reinhardt Schneider story, I didn't get the bad ending for that. I should have went ahead and done that. So I don't know. Maybe we'll stream some Castlevania 64 at some point, and I'll get to the end of the game so I can capture the ending to or the bad ending to that game. I love Castlevania 64. I've played it way too many times the last 10 years, and I still really love playing it. It's probably one of my favorite games of all time, alongside like Skies of Arcadia. I used to put Resident Evil 4 up there, but I question my feelings on Resident Evil 4 these days, just because it's been so long since I've played it. I wonder if I could sit down and still enjoy Resident Evil 4 as much as I did back then. Maybe someday, maybe one day. So just been working on that, and then in doing so, I was thinking about I was talking to my friend because he kind of asked about my thoughts on the future of the Castlevania series with Konami, and Konami. It's kind of hard to say where Konami's going at the moment, because they did that Bomberman R release for Switch, and they put out an interview a while back ago when that happened, and they were like, "Hey, we're interested in doing more games for these our classic IPs." I think specifically by name they mentioned Castlevania, and so I'm really curious to see if Konami will ever do anything else with Castlevania beyond re-releasing stuff. They did that Symphony of the Night and Rondo of Blood re-release on PS4 last year. Was that this year? I think it was last year, as well. And I don't really know what Konami's going to do at this point with Castlevania or anything like that. But they are doing something right now. If you probably remember, about a year or so ago, they announced they're doing Grimoire of Souls for the for mobile phones, and that game actually looks really cool. I probably talked about it on this show. It's a mobile game. You have to have your expectations in check for that. But it's like a neat little like battle arena kind of thing where you can select different Castlevania characters and then go through a series of combat encounters. It reminds me a lot of Portrait of Ruins multiplayer mode, where you went through like 5 rooms. And unfortunately, in Portrait of Ruin, the 5 rooms are the same every time. So obviously, this game has like different stuff in there. And the game just looks more unique compared to like the Harmony of Despair game, which kind of was pulling in assets from other games and trying to kind of replicate the Castlevania, Metroidvania style in a way that I think it kind of failed to do so. But I probably need to spend more time with Harmony of Despair before I ever completely write it off. But yeah, so Grimoire Soul is a neat looking game. And so I was thinking, because I was looking on their website and they hadn't really updated anything since they ran the beta in May of last year. Which I did notice in the beta notes they put out, they actually posted some of the feedback that they gotten, and it was a lot of like people complaining about the controls. So hopefully they've cleaned that up. But I was having a hard time finding information about it. But my friend Tim actually sent me over a URL. Sent me over a URL, an article. I think his name is Zunj EX or something like that. He's a analyst who basically specializes in, I think it's like the South Asia market. Is it the South Asian market? I don't remember for sure. I'll post the link to the actual post in the description for this episode. But they in January they posted some financials, and actually in those financials said that the Grimoire of Souls actually is going to be a worldwide release, which I think might be the first time we've heard that. So I'm actually very excited to see that. I mean, I would obviously love for that to come to a platform that has actual gamepad controls. I really haven't played a lot of mobile games that uses virtual buttons. So the idea of playing an action 2D, beat 'em up kind of thing, with a touchscreen is not super appealing to me. But I thought that's pretty exciting. I know a lot of people are gonna, poo-poo that game because it's a mobile Castlevania game, and that's fine. I get it. But I want to look at that game for what it is and the platform it's on, and spend some time with it. I'm actually pretty excited for it. I think it has a nice look. It doesn't have it's not like super high budget, but it's got a nice clean look to it. It's not really cel shaded, but it's got kind of like a simple character models with simple coloring in a way that I think works very well. But yeah, apparently they haven't really put much out about the game since the beta, so hopefully we'll see some stuff soon. I'm kind of crossing my fingers it comes to like PC or something. I know that's always like a way I always cross my fingers for mobile games to come to a platform with a controller, especially if it's something like that, where it's like an actual game that would benefit from a controller rather than just like something that is built around a touchscreen. But yeah, I'm really crossing my fingers it does come to something that I can use a gamepad for or something. That would be nice. And then kind of in extra related news, there's also like a Bloodstain trailer that got put out that showed kind of updated graphics. Bloodstain, I think visually it looks fine. Even the updated graphics they posted, and I'll put the trailer for this in the description. Even the updated graphics they posted, I think look okay at best. Definitely looks better than it used to, but there's something about that game that just reminds me of like a DL site game or like a Japanese doujin game. It doesn't look like a Japanese doujin game entirely, but it reminds me of one for some reason. I think it has a lot to do with the lighting and the shading of the textures and things like that. And I think the visual overhaul they did definitely helps it. So maybe it doesn't look like that anymore, but I'm so used to seeing Bloodstain look like this weird DL site looking thing that I'm just like, yeah, it still looks like that. But yeah, that's coming out soon. That and Shenmue supposedly are coming out, I think summer this year. So I'm looking forward to checking those out. I'm not going to sit there and say that, I'm super excited for them, because I really need to see more of Bloodstained, and I really haven't seen anything for Shenmue. I don't really have a great belief that Shenmue 3 will be a good game, but I'm excited to look at it at the very least, and continue the saga after all these years. So yeah, I had a lot to talk about this week. So I guess that's gonna be it. Thanks for coming. As I mentioned last week, the Mighty Number 9 video went up. So if you watched it and liked it, thank you very much. I'm very surprised about the positive feedback I got about that video. I was a little concerned doing that video because Mighty Number 9 is I think a topic that nobody really wants to say is a good game or something like that. So I don't and I always say this about games where I'm trying to present an opinion that doesn't necessarily line up with the mainstream opinion, is that I don't need you you to change your opinion on Mighty Number 9. You could definitely dislike Mighty Number 9 as is, but I really hope you see the perspective and the reasoning behind why I think that game is really cool. And so hopefully, you know, if you ever do come across someone else who's like, hey, I like Mighty Number 9, there's a foundation and an understanding of you know why someone might like it. You know, I think I just want to portray, you know, it as in a logical, you know, thought, something like that. So I don't know if that makes a lot of sense, but if, you know, I try my best to explain why I like something and try my best to, you know, point out the things that I think are the reason why people don't like it and things like that, and try to be as balanced as possible, even though I'm sitting there pretty much like endorsing Mighty Number 9, be like, hey, this is a great game. As I said in the video, Inti Creates paid for my dinner in like 2016. So if you want to not believe me because they spent like $10 on a Red Robin burger for me, that's fine. So yeah, that's up. I want to do, like, I'm always going to sit here and say I want to do more, but you know, I'm thinking about just trying to do some shorter articles or something, like even if I could just like post one in between each video. You know, I don't want my article feed to be completely dead. So we'll see. I'm looking at a lot of things, and you know, I want to do a lot. I keep thinking about doing Final Fantasy 11 data mining stuff, but it's just time, and I have to make sure I take care of myself too, and not let myself kill myself while I'm doing this stuff. So yeah, that's it. Thanks again for coming. OneControllerPort.com is the website. The next video is going to go up at the last Tuesday of March. It's going to be for Shaman King Master of Spirits, which if you're a Castlevania fan, I highly recommend you checking it out. It does some really interesting things with the Castlevania design. It's kind of built on Area of Sorrow's engine, so some neat stuff. I've basically finished editing the video, so I just gotta kind of clean it up, and then it'll be ready for the end of the month. And then I'm gonna start on the gun gauge video. I'm also working on the Castlevania 64 script, as I mentioned earlier. That script is currently a nightmare mess, so we'll see what happens. Hopefully it'll be ready for, I think May would be the time frame for Castlevania. So yeah, thanks for coming, and I hope you have a great week. Bye.